Everyone should also have in mind any people who need shidduchim or panosa. When we say this kapitel, Neis Rotzain, everyone should find the shidduchim easy and panosa easy. Shir Amalois, Mimamakim, Krasicha Adonai. Adonai, Shema Bekoili, Tianos Nacha Kashuvais, the Koil Tachanunai. Imavoinai, Sishmaya, Adonai, Miyamai. Kimcha Aslicha, Leman Tivarei. Kivisi Adonai, Kivsa Nafshi, Vidvarai, Hoichalti. Nafshi Ladonai, Mishoimerim Laboiker, Shoimerim Laboiker. Yachel Yisrael El Adonai, Kim Adonai Yachesed, V'harbei Imoi Fedus. Yivdeh Es Yisrael, Mikael Avoinoi Sav. Shiberach Avosenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shloimei Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah v'Yivarach v'Rapes Kol Choyle Yisrael v'Avashkol HaKol Mispalim Bavuram v'Schazak HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimal Rachem Aleihem v'Lachlimam v'Rapoisam v'Lachzikam v'Lachyoisam v'Yishach Lehem Meheira Refuah Shalem M'Shemayim v'Chol Avereim v'Chol Gedeim Refuah Z'Nefesh Refuah Z'Gufach Golos Ma'Korev v'Noimar Amen Acheinu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzoro v'Shivya Oimnim bein bayom and bein bayabasha. Hamakoy mirachem aleim. Yotzim mitzorah l'rvacha, m'veila l'oira, mishibud l'geula, ha'ashtova golav zman kariv v'noimar. Amen.
Bershus, Rashi Kolel, Rashi Yeshiva, Rabbanim, Maggidei Shiur, Bershus kol hakal HaKadosh hazeh. Bruchim habaim b'shem Hashem. How fortunate every single one of us are to be able to be sitting in this room today. And I want to open today by expressing our Hakaras Hatov to our host, the Agudath Yisrael of Toronto, and our Hakaras Hatov to all the organizers who made this very special Asifa happen today. When I speak to those who learn Daf Yomi, they'll tell me, you never know what tomorrow will bring in life. But one thing I know about today, that today I will definitely learn Torah. That today I will definitely learn another Daf Gemara. That today I'll learn one more blot towards finishing this Masechta. And so they will finish Shas through the Mahalach, the approach of today. Allow me to tell you about today. Today, we, the Toronto Jewish community, gathers together in one of the most remarkable and historic gatherings of Achdus. Together, we joined with hundreds of thousands of Yidden, of Jews from around the world. We joined together with Jews from every background, from many different backgrounds. Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Yeshivish, Hasidus, you name it, so on and so forth. And we all come together for Achdus, for unity. We put aside our differences in this incredible display of Achdus, and that is what we are all a part of today. Today is not just about Achdus. Today we rise to show Kavod Torah. To all of our Maggidei Shiur, to all the Masayimim, to their wives and their families who are Moser Nefesh, because for the last 7.5 years, day in, day out, regardless of how they were feeling, sugya after sugya, they plowed through daf after daf, mesechta after mesechta, until they finished the complete 2,711 daf of Shas. That's today. And today, after all their hard work, 7.5 years, they stand here today not to say, Gomarnu, Siyamnu, I did it, I'm done, but rather to say, Hadran Alach, I want more. It was amazing. I'm coming back. Hadran Alach. That's what they're here today for. I want to open up today by asking everyone to please rise and to show proper Kavod Torah to every single one of the Maggidei Shiur and the Masayimim who finished the Shas in the 13th Siyum Hashas today. If I can kindly ask all those who are Masayim Shas to please remain standing, and everybody else to make yourselves comfortable. To all those Masayimim, Mazel Tov. Years ago, I knew a man by the name of Mr. Ezra Berkowitz. He was a Vizhnitzer Chassid before the war. He survived Auschwitz-Birkenau. He was eventually liberated from Dachau. He told me shortly after his liberation, he was walking the streets and he saw two young boys holding popcorn, wrapped in a paper cone. And when he looked at this cone, he saw that was a Daf Gemara. And he asked the boys, where'd you get the popcorn? And they pointed to the vendor. And he walked over. And he saw, as this vendor was scooping popcorn and ripping off the top page, the next daf of the Gemara, filling it with popcorn and giving it to children. He said that day he was heartbroken. It killed him to see that. Mr. Berkowitz, I don't know where you are today, but I hope that you'll be comforted in knowing that although on that day they disgraced the pages of the Gemara, that today Klal Yisrael is in middle of inscribing the words of the Gemara onto our hearts, minds, and neshamas today with 150,000 Yidden around the world learning 2,711 daf, totaling over more than 400 million blot Gemara in what's now being looked at as the largest Siyum Hashas in 1,000 years. That's today. Yes, today we gather in unity in Achdus. And yes, we gather for Cheshivas HaTorah, for those to celebrate those that finish Shas. But we're also here today to celebrate those that are about to start. Because looking around the room, not everybody who finished Shas is full-time learning in Kollel, Klei Kodesh. Hard-working doctors, lawyers, business people. That's who's standing here today making Siyum Hashas. We have to leave this room today, every single one of us, learning just a little bit more. Last Wednesday, I got a text from one of my balabatim who said to me, what time are services today? This man is not observant, he's not frum. I thought it was strange. I saw him at Mincha and I asked him, what brought you today? He was trying to follow along. And he said to me, Rabbi, last Saturday night, they tried to kill our Hasidic brothers. And all I could think is that I need to become more Jewish. And then he said to me, how can I learn Daf Yomi? He understood that with the anti-Semitism around the world, the response is not to hide, but to learn more. He understood Ki Heim Chayenu V'Orech Yameinu. But the message I took out of it was something different. Here's a guy who's not from, who's ready to start learning Shas. So what's any Yid's excuse? So often in life we say one day I'll learn Shas. One day I'll learn a Masechta. One day I'll learn more. One day I'll learn Be'in. One day I'll learn everything Bekias. One day I'll learn more. One day. Today is the first day of the Daf Yomi cycle. Today is not the day to say one day, but to say day one. That's today. I want to just conclude with a Gemara above Metzia. The Gemara quotes here Mioah Navi's question, asking why did the Churban Beis HaMikdash happen? Churban Beis Rishon. And the Gemara answers, Shelo Bercha B'Torah Tchila, because they weren't Mavarich B'Torah. They didn't say the blessings on Torah beforehand. But the Ran B'Shem Rabbeinu Yonah in Adarim says, the Iker problem, the main issue wasn't that they didn't make the blessings on Torah before, but rather, they weren't Machshav Torah. They didn't see its importance. They didn't appreciate it for what it really was. And that's what contributed to the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. My friends, if the lack of Chashivas HaTorah is what contributed to the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, then what we are doing here in this room today by showing incredible Chashivas HaTorah is together we are rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash. My hope is that at the next Siyum Hashas in 2027, we are all together in the Beis HaMikdash, B'Yushalayim, B'Mheira B'Yameinu. Amen. It is my great kavod and schus to introduce Rav Shlomo Miller, the Rosh Kol of Kol Toronto, for Divrei Bracha.
B'shus, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbonim, Talmidei Chachomim, Loimdei Torah, Loimdei Daf Yomi, those who have learned it, those that will learn it, Mir Hashem. B'shus Kulam, and B'shus, my Daf Yomi Chavruser of Rom Khan. Mary Aboisai, we have better speakers than me, than myself. I'll just say a few short words. The Shas Bavli ends with the words of Tana Devei Eliyahu. In the yeshiva of Eliyahu, they learned, Kashoyne halachos b'chol yoim. If you learn halachos every day of your life, muftach lo is certain to be ben olam haba. Shneimar, it's written in Pasuk, halichos olam loy. Al tikri halichos ela halachos. That's how Shas ends. Very strange. Halichos olam loy, called halachos. What's going to do with Shon halachos? Ben olam haba. Now, there's a famous Maisa with the Chofetz Chaim. A rich person from Varsha came to visit Chofetz Chaim in his little town, Radin. And he saw the Chofetz Chaim's home, broken furniture, nothing there. So the Gvir asked the Chofetz Chaim, Rebbe, who's dein Mebel? Where is your furniture? So the Chofetz Chaim answered him, Rebbe, where is your furniture? So he said, well, my furniture is in Varsha. I'm a traveler here. I don't take my furniture with me when I'm traveling. So Chofetz Chaim answered him, Ich bin oichet, a traveler. I'm in this world as a traveler. We don't live in this world. We are travelers in this world. Das ist nicht mein Heim. but this is my home, this world. That's what the Gemara means. Halichos olam loi. This world is not your world. The Gemara says in the Dorim by Shimon HaTzadik. Found the Dorim, one Nozer from Dorim. And the Nozer tells the whole story why he became a Nozer. He had beautiful long hair. And he saw the Yitzhar was making him proud of his beautiful hair, long locks. And he said, Rasha, lama tamizgara b'yolam she'ein shalach. This world is not ours. That's what the Gemara teaches. That's what Torah teaches us. This is not our world. What is our world? What is the olam shalanu? Olam haba. Halichos olam lo. You are traveling to your world. This is not our world. That's what you have to constantly remind yourself. Learning Daf Yomi, learning Torah is preparation for the olam lo. You're walking and traveling to olam lo, your world. That's what we're starting now. We're making a new haskola of the halichos olam lo. Whatever you learn, every Yid has to learn something. Realize he's preparing for his world. This is not our world. The David HaMelech was a great personality. Did many great things. The Gemara says, "Haroya David b'chalayim yitzap lechasidus." He was a chassid, a real chassid. He took care of panos of Klal Yisrael. Yisrael Shir and panos and more brachas. He had the responsibility of providing panos for every Yid. He prepared the building based on Mikdash. But what was by him the most important thing in his life? He exclaimed, Lulei sarascha shashuai. They wouldn't have your Torah as my delight. Oh, zavati v'anyi. I'd have been lost with all my pain, all my afflictions. And even the b'anyi, with millions of dollars of gold and silver, nothing. To talking and learning. That's what we're here today for. Everyone's supposed to think we have a wonderful Torah. And lulei sarascha shashuoi ozavati v'anyi. We have to have a shashua in Torah. Enjoyment in Torah, that's the greatest enjoyment a Yid can have. Lulei sarascha shashuoi ozavati v'anyi. Give a bracha to all the people here that came together for that Torah. They should be not just mechaber the Torah, but they should zoiche to have terascha, shashui, and have richtig hatzlacha in Torah. Amen.
It's one thing to be able to learn the daf. It's something else to be able to teach it. It's incredible to look around how many people have learned, to hear the numbers, the mesiras nefesh of people that have gone through Shas in the last 7.5 years. But we have to be honest that most of it wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the tireless dedication of all of the Maggidei Shiur, of all those that have taught the Daf Yomi, who worked hard day in, day out, regardless how they were feeling. And every single day they came to teach us the Daf. If I can kindly ask the Maggidei Shiur to please rise at this time. We know you're out there. You see their humility. We have a special presentation to all of the Maggidei Shiur. On behalf of the Maggidei Shiur, those that have been teaching the Daf Yomi, we have Rabbi Avram Weisbrod, who will be accepting the gift on behalf of all of the Maggidei Shiur, and will be presented by Mr. Shami Reichman at this time. It's my privilege to introduce Rav Chaim Mendel Brodsky, Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshiva Gedola of Toronto, for Divrei Chizuk.
Birshus, Moronon, Rabbonon, Rabbi Sai, Gedoyle HaTorah, Rosh HaKollel, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbonim, Marbitzei Torah, על הלומדי תורה, and כל הקודש הזה. I stand there as a shliach tzibur to express the sentiments that I think we all share at this heilige moment from Kavodat Torah, from Kiddush Shem Shamayim. And really, I don't have to do much but echo the words that we were zeichet to hear previously from Marina Rav Shloimeh, and all the words that were expressed, and Marina Rav Shmuel, now sein gesund und stark. I just want to put it in words that I think we all can relate to, and it's something that I think we all share, the same sentiments, the same feeling. You know, the Simcha of Siyum, it's very interesting, the Makor of Mikan She'oisen Sudo Legomra Shel Torah is learned out, it's brought in the Beis Yosef and Al-Zarua. It's where Shlomo HaMelech was mispal. And Shlomo HaMelech had gebeten, he asked to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'nasato la'avdecha leiv shemeya. What does this mean, leiv shemeya? A heart, was versteht, a heart that understands, a depth of understanding that penetrates all the inner chambers of one's heart. That intuitive kind of understanding with the ganze Chochma Shleimah, that's what he asked for. And for what purpose? Steht in Pasuk, L'hovinu lahaskil b'chol divrei HaTorah. To be able to understand, L'hovinu lahaskil. We say every day, V'seim b'libeinu l'hovinu lahaskil. These are the words of Shlomo HaMelech. L'hovinu lahaskil b'chol divrei HaTorah. He was chalishing, he was yearning to develop a kesher with the Torah, an intimate kesher, a kesher that is an intuitive understanding, a heart-to-heart understanding. And this is the bakosh of all of Klal Yisrael. Ve'yisem li zgula mikol ha'amim shteit in Mechilta, knuyim li va'iskim b'teirasi. Zgula, sagt Rashi, the Targum, oitzer chaviv. Chavivus means, like we had v'navshoy kshura b'navshoy, the Targum says, navshoy chaviva leik navshoy. Chiba is a kesher, is kashrus for nefesh b'nefesh. We want to connect with the Torah in such a way of his kashrus, nefesh b'nefesh, that's who we are. Segula mikol ha'amim. And Shlomo HaMelech was mevakesh, V'hovinu lahaskil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered his tefillah and granted him chokhmah shloimah. And it says, when Shlomo was overcome with the simcha, that he received this ability to be able to connect with the Torah in such a way, he made a vayas mishta l'chol avodov, mikan she'oisin sudu l'gomra shel Torah. Shlomo HaMelech didn't make a siyum. How is this the source for Kisuda Goyma Shel Torah? Hat auf dem gesagt, zu Reb Moshe Soloveitchik, Zechayne Levracha, älterer Bruder von Briskara, der Sohn von Reb Chaim, hat gesagt as follows, steht da, what you see here is the Simcha of Siyum, is because Al Yadei, that Harvard, every member, everyone that put in his efforts and he endeavored to learn yet a blad Gemara, he cultivated a connection with that blad Gemara. And it's a two-way, it's a mutual connection. Im Tazveini Yom Yemayim Ezveko, and verkehrt when you come closer, Nefesh Omeil Omlaloi. When you toil to understand the Dvar Hashem, then the Torah becomes connected to you. Ad kedei kach, Chazal sagen, Hu Omeil b'mokim zeh, v'atoira imeles le b'mokim acher. And Rashi brings in Sanhedrin, HaTorah is mischanenes mevakeshes mipnei koino, legalo is loitaimei Torah. The Torah intercedes on behalf of its partner, the liberated Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Hashem miten chokhmah mipiv das utfuna, should enlighten the liberated Torah even further and further, deeper and deeper in his understanding, in his connection with the Torah. And this is the simcha when we say at Hasiyum, Hadron Aloch, Hadroch Alon, two-way connection. Daitoch Alon, Daiton Aloch. Daiton Aloch, Daitoch Alon. Loi nisne shiminoch, loi sisne shiminon. We can't take our minds off each other. We're madly in love with each other. We are so connected. These are not romantic words that we're making a siyum. This is defining our connection to the Torah. And it's a connection that we want it to grow and grow and grow. The more we apply ourselves with every daf that we learn, and we endeavor to understand it to the best of our ability, we become connected, and that connection grows and intensifies. And we metamorphosize from our kleinere shaykhs to our größere shaykhs. We become one with the Torah. In the simcha of Siyum is the simcha von haben chasanim mit the Torah. Let me read the words of the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. We just came out of the Yontif Chanukah. The Psukim in Shir Hashirim, Kapitel Vav, Psukim Zayin Ches Tes. Pasuk Zayin and Ches, I have to be brief. Pasuk Zayin and Ches. Pasuk Zayin is depicting Klal Yisrael in the Zman of the Chashmonaim, so says the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. This is describing the godless of the Chashmonaim and the hechere godless of the madreges of tzidkes of the Chashmonaim. That's the first pasuk. The next pasuk, Shishim Heima Melocha Yisu Shmoinim Pilakshim V'aloma Yisein Mispah. This is the armies, the Yevanim, were a combination of the armies of the Yevanim. Edoim, it says, the Targum, together with Yishmael. Shishim Heima Melocha Yis, das is Edoim, Ushmoinim Pilakshim, these are the armies of Yishmael. And they joined forces and attempted to destroy Klal Yisrael. And now comes the next pasuk here. I'll translate what the Targum says. With what redeeming quality were we saved and we were zoicha to the nitzachen and to regain the Beis Hamikdash? So the pasuk says, pasuk tes, Achasi yoinosi samosi. This is Klal Yisrael, that's Nimshal Yoina. Yoina is faithful to its partner and will never go elsewhere. A loyalty forever. And Klal Yisrael is Nimshal, and these are the words of the Targum, Mesila Yoina so shlimto. Like Rashi brings, Klal Yisrael's Nimshal to this Yoina. We are faithful partner to Kaddish Baruch. Kaddish Baruch says, Pischi le'achoisi rayosi yoinosi samosi. Now the pasuk continues, Achasi le'imo borahi le'yeladito. Listen to the Targum. When Klal Yisrael was in a life-threatening situation, when the Yevanim are out to destroy them, Edom and Yishmael joined forces. Now, at that time, Havas Knishta the Yisrael, Knesses Yisrael, the Mesila le'yoinsa shlimta, that's compared to a Yoinosi Samosi. So Klal Yisrael with the Yoinosi Samosi means this devotion is manifests itself. Polcha believe chad. They serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Beirei Olam believe chad in unity. Mevakshe Hashem is a Lashon Rabim. All of Klal Yisrael is in Mevakshe Hashem, but it's Yismach Leiv Mevakshe Hashem. Leiv chad, it's one heart. In unity, Klal Yisrael serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Achasi, Yoinosi Samosi. They're devoted to me as one entity, Belev Chad. The next words of the pasuk, Achas hi le'imo. Imo means the Torah. Shema b'ni Musa, this is the Targum says, Shema b'ni Musa avicha al titosh Torah simecho. Zogen Chazal, avicha zu Torah shebiksav, imecho zu Torah shebal peh. Achas hi le'imo. Achido le'eraisa. She's unified with the Torah. The asko bepiskami eraisa. Believe shlim. And she's oisek. She toils. Klal Yisrael, remember, rolls up their sleeves to be oisek. Believe shlim. With our ganze hearts, they put their whole heart and soul into it. All the effort that the other einer that's being Messiah, and those that are learning, believe shlim, they're putting in their whole heart and soul. This is Klal Yisrael, Achido le'eraisa, they're unified with the Torah. And that's a oneness that grows and grows and grows. Now the words, Borahi le'eladito. Uberiron zachvaso, ki yoimo denefakas b'mitzrayim. And this illuminates with a clarity, it crystallizes and illuminates the defining characteristic, the redeeming quality of Klal Yisrael. Like at the more time of its inception, by Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Yitzias Mitzrayim was Boitziacho, Esom Mitzrayim, Tavdu Neselekim ala Horazeh. That's what we were redeemed for. That's the culmination of the Geula. When we said Naaseh v'nishma, as the Zohar says, this is brought into Beis HaLevi in Zayin HaGedomo, Naaseh be'uvdin tovin alle mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs. V'nishma means understanding. Be'pizgame de'eraisa. We'll apply all our heart and soul to toil, to understand and imbibe. Pizgame de'eraisa, oil eisek ha'Torah. Knuyim livoiskim b'teirasi. That's who we are. That's our definition. That's our lifeblood. And this is the schus that illuminated Klal Yisrael in the time of the Yevanim as it did by the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim. We are Bora le'eladito. Achasi le'ima, Borahi le'eladito. Gimel shutfim ba'odam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Abba ve'ima. The all-encompassing yitzir of a person is all encompassed by this shutfus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here we see that the Torah is Abba, is Avicha, Mashma b'ni Musar Avicha, the Torah shebiksav. Ima is Torah shebal peh, Val titosh Torah simecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Malami Torah, Hashem miten chochma mipiv da'as utfuna. And Maggidei, the Torah, which is our Ovi ve'imi, the all-encompassing Yitzira, which forms us and has a formative effect on who we are, how we think, how we feel, how we talk, how we do. That's Bonim Atem L'Hashem Elokeichem. We are children, and Tamidim Kliyim Bonim, Zokt Rashi, Shenema Bonim Atem L'Hashem Elokeichem. When we imbibe the limud HaTorah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Shechina Yeshiv V'Shoyne Kenegda, he's our Charusa. And he's Malamid Torah to every one of us. We are Bonim L'Hashem Elokeichem, and every member of Klal Yisrael, and the Noshim that make it possible. We are all Bonim L'Hashem Elokeichem, and that's the Achida of Klal Yisrael. This Maimah today is a family portrait. The beauty of Klal Yisrael, it's a picture to be etched in our souls and our hearts, to take with us, and 24/7, we should be invigorating ourselves to grow and grow and grow in intensifying our Achido le'eraisa, Achasi le'ima, Borahi le'eladito. And with this chuz, Klal Yisrael was nigga on the time of the Yevanim, like the Targum continues. Ubechein, with this chuz, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was loichein milchamtom, and was goyel them at that time. And in das Begilas Antiochus Fierzois, Hakel Hasher Osu Lahem Oisvafele, Hu Yaselonu Oisvafele, ויקויים בנו מיקרו שכוסוף, כי מצא ישראל ממצרים הראינו נפלויס. We should be zoiche with the Bora Hile Eladata, illuminating this chus of Klal Yisrael. May we be zoiche to the Gula Shleima b'm bias Mashiach Tzidkenu b'm heira b'yameinu. Amen.
Hashem Elokeinu Zdirei Zoyrosecho Befinu Uviyoi Samcho Beis Yisroel V'harev no V'harev Hashem Befinu, befiyoi samcho beis Yisroel. Befiyoi samcho beis Yisroel. V'hniyeh anachnu v'tetzoeinu, v'tetzoei amcho beis Yisroel. Kol ha'yidei shemecho Hashem Elokeinu Zdirei Zoyrosecho Befinu Uviyoi Samcho Beis Yisroel. V'harev no Hashem Befinu, befiyoi samcho beis Yisroel. V'niyeh anachnu v'tetzoeinu, v'tetzoei amcho beis Yisroel. Hoyoi kol ha'yidei shemecho
weeks ago, I was on my way to yeshiva early in the morning. I was driving down Bathurst. Maybe I was around Finch or Shepherd. And a bus pulls in front of me, and within a couple of seconds, I'm stopped by a red light behind the bus. I lift my head. I see the following words: be your own hero. There are many heroes that we are celebrating today, but there's one group of heroes that sometimes they don't get the limelight. They don't stand out. Moirai v'Rabbaisai, please join me in giving a round of applause and a standing ovation to the 1,375 plus Toronto Masmidim of Agudath Yisrael's Masmidei Hasiyum. Who have collectively amassed and contributed over 501,626 psukim of Chumash, 141,502 Mishnayos, and 577,517 lines of Gemara. Unbelievable. For those of you Masmidim who have used this initiative to motivate yourselves to push more day after day, just like those who learned Daf Yomi, calling up the hotline, putting in your PIN number, adding up what you've learned, I have great news for you. Whereas worldwide, this program of Masmidei Hasiyum has really come to a close, here in the city of Toronto, we have the zechus of continuing this program for a bit of a bonus round. We have a goal. Our goal is to hit over 250,000 Mishnayos in the next month, which will culminate Motzei Shabbos, February 8th, at the Toronto citywide Avos Ubanim Pirchei Siyum Mishnayos Melava Malka. And I think you can all do that. There's one thing that I think we can all take out of this program. Masmidim, please listen carefully. I'm speaking to you. This program has taught us how to focus on the small things that we do. It's our small accomplishments. It's the single pasuk, the one Mishnah, one line of Gemara, that it counts, that it's important, that it contributes to something bigger. How many times I myself called up with Talmidim of mine into the hotline with my own children. It was exciting to put in what you learn, and then for them to tell you what your totals are. And after that, you get to hear the worldwide totals that you have just contributed to. Really exhilarating. One line of Gemara. But I didn't finish the sugya, I didn't learn the Rashi. Every word of Torah counts. Masmidim, you have done a wonderful job. Keep up the great work. We, the city of Toronto, are collectively very proud of you. You are the future of Klal Yisrael, and we are cheering for your success. So don't give up. Be makshiv each and every one of your small successes, and in time, you will become one of the next level of heroes. And we will be celebrating your Siyum Hashas. Until then, let's keep it up. Push further. Continue to call the hotline. Put in your PIN number. And we'll see you together Motzi Shabbos, February 8th. Thank you very much.
It's my privilege to introduce our guest speaker, Mor D'Asra of Kahal Nachlas David of Brooklyn, New York. He gives a popular halacha shiur daily that's broadcasted throughout the world. He's a Talmud Muvak of Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita, and he's authored 9-volume series of Sfarim on Hilchos Yom Tif. Without further ado, our guest speaker, Rav Daniel Usher Kleinman.
Mori v'Rabbi, Rosh HaKollel, Rosh HaYeshiva, Rabbanim, Mesayimim, B'chol HaKohol HaKadosh Hazeh. There's a Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yud Ches. Amar Abaye, Teisili. Abaye took pride in the fact that Ki Chazina Tzurba Me Rabbanon, the Shalom Mesechta, Avidna Yom Tov LeRabbanon. When Abaye witnessed a young Talmid Chacham who finished the Mesechta, Abaye made a yontif l'Rabbanon for the entire yeshiva. The Maharsha notes, Abaye did not make an individual yontif just for that individual who had been Mesayim the Mesechta. Abaye made a siyum for the entire yeshiva, l'Rabbanon. Zok the Maharsha, why? The Chazina Ki'ilu kulam lamdu b'shleimus. When one person is Messiah a Masechta, the credit does not just go to him. The impact is not just felt by him. The impact is felt and the credit goes to the Messiahim, to their wives, to their families, to their friends, to their acquaintances, to their community. It's a communal simcha, and that's the yontif of this siyum. 93 years ago, in Teves of 1927, Tov Reish Pei Zayin, Reb Meir Shapiro, the Lublina Rosh Hashiva, was visiting Toronto. On a Thursday night, he entered the Beis Yaakov Shul on Henry Street. And he was shocked to find a large group of people learning Torah. He was overcome with emotion. And he ran up to the bima, and he gave a clap, and he made the bracha shechayanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh b'shem u'malchus. Imagine what Reb Meir Shapiro would say today. Thousands of Torontonians have come together in a magnificent display of Kavod HaTorah, Kavod for Loimdei Torah, Kavod for the Daf Yomi, the brainchild of Reb Moshe Shapiro 93 years later. Imagine what would Reb Meir Shapiro's emotions be today. How would Reb Meir have expressed himself upon witnessing such a glorious Kvod Shamayim? You know, one of the wonders of the world is the Beis HaMedrash. We live in a world of change. Mighty empires rise and fall. New generations come and they relegate passions of the past to the dustbin of history. And the humble Beis HaMedrash, the Daled Amay Shel Halacha, the Heilige Torah, remains true and unchanged, and it demands an explanation. We live in a society driven by social media, by WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, by the World Wide Web. What is it that inspires Jews the world over from all walks of life, of all ages and stages, to plumb the depths of Shas and toil over an ancient Talmud developed millennia ago? We all know that the answer is very simple. Torah is not just a text. Torah is not a philosophy. Torah is not theology. Torah is Eitz Chayim Hi, it's Divrei Elokim Chayim. Torah is life itself. And so with all other things, they only have as much viability as their bearers and promoters. They live with them, and ultimately they wither and they die with them. But not so Torah's Hashem. Torah is kiheim chayenu va'oirach yameinu, and life never becomes stale. Life can never become outdated or obsolete. We eat, we sleep, we breathe. It can never be considered antiquated. Torah is as fresh as ever because Torah is chiyus. But it's not just that Torah is chiyus. The Rosh Hashiva mentioned before, the Chafetz Chaim was ma'orer. We say in the Siyum Hadron Alach Talmud Bavli, the Hadra Chalon, we will return to you, Talmud Bavli. Please return to us. Daiton Alach Talmud Bavli. We keep our mind focused on you, Talmud Bavli. Daitoch Alon, please keep your mind on us. We talk to the Torah, Zok the Chafetz Chaim. Torah is alive. Torah has chiyus. Every Messiah, their wives, every person here who has a connection to Torah should know this. If you have a relationship with the Torah, if Torah is precious to you, if it's Daiton Alach, then the Torah reciprocates and it's Daitoch Alon. And in addition to the Torah, the Gemara teaches us that the Heilige Amoraim are alive as well. The Gemara in Yevamah says, David HaMelech David, he prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Agura ba'aholcha elamim. Allow me to live in your tent in two worlds. And the Gemara asks, is it possible for somebody to live in two worlds? And the Gemara says, yes. Omar David lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rabbeinu Shalaylam. Yehi ratzon sheyoimru dvar shmua mipi ba'olam hazeh. Let them say over my Torah. Why? The Omar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Reb Shimon ben Yochai, because Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Reb Shimon Yochai, Kol Talmid Chacham she'oimrim dvar shmua mipi ba'olam hazeh sivsaisav doivos bekever. A Talmid Chacham who is quoted ba'olam hazeh, his lips move in the grave. Zakt Rashi, it's ki'ilu hu chai. It's as if he's alive. The Maharal says Torah is the Eitz HaChaim. The Amoraim who taught us Torah, they have grabbed onto the Eitz HaChaim and it is as if they are alive. And the Yefei Toyar says when you mention an Amora's name, it's as if he's standing there teaching Torah. The Amoraim live. You know, I knew an old Polish Yid in Los Angeles. His name was Reb Shlomo Kuleng. He grew up in Varsha. And when he was a 9-year-old boy, the Nazis invaded. He was herded into the ghetto, and his parents and siblings and extended family were all murdered. And he was the lone survivor. And he miraculously survived the Gehenna of Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Majdanek. And 5 years passed, the formative years of a child, when most children are in Cheder, learning with the Rabbi, the Chumash, Mishnayos, Gemara. Little Shloimeh was learning the sugya of Yisurim and Mesiras Nefesh. And it didn't end there. After the war, he wandered alone for 15 years. And he ended up in America, and he married, and he had 2 children. He had a son and a daughter. And when his son reached bar mitzvah, he sent him across the United States, thousands of miles away, in an age when there were no cell phones, to Yeshiva in Yisrael. His passion was Torah. He would sit at home with a chumash, as if he remained with the hasagas of that 4th grader who was ripped out of his classroom. And I asked him once, it wasn't hard for you to send your only son, nobody in the world, your only son, thousands of miles away, it wasn't difficult. And listen to what he replied. He said, when I was a little boy in Cheder, in Warsaw, during recess I was drawn to the Bachrim, and I would stand by the door of their classroom. He said I would go upstairs and I would listen to them learning Gemara. And he sang for me. He said, I still remember the niggin. Omar Abaye hat Abaye gelernt. He said, it still reverberates in my ears. And I dreamed that one day I would sing that niggin. And he said, but I wasn't Zeicha. But my children and grandchildren sing that niggin. And that's what I wanted. This lonely Yosem was moved by the chiyus of Abaye. He lived with the dreams of Abaye. It was Daiton Allah. And Abaye, who was a Yasam, Asher B'cha Yerucham Yasaim, accompanied this Yasam to the camps. And he molded this Yasam's children. And he defined this Yasam's destiny. It was Daita Chalon. Shlomo Kulang was Zeicha to grandchildren, Marbitzei Torah, Rabbanim, Roshei Koilel, Mechabrei Svarim. Because it was Daiton Allah. And when it's Daiton Allah, it's Daita Chalon, the Torah cares for you. The Loimdei Daf Yomi, Loimdei Torah, their wives, their families have made Torah an inextricable part of their lives. They toil day in and day out and they live with the Torah. It's Daiton Allah. You should know that the Torah lives with you. It's Daita Chalon. It's a part of your life. The Amoraim are present in your homes. And it will shape you, it will shape your families, and it will define your destiny. And this Siyum is a Yontif. It's dedicated to the miracle of Torah. It's a celebration of our relationship with the Torah. And it's a celebration of the Torah's relationship with us. You know, one of the ways, the best ways to live with Torah day in and day out is Daf Yomi. So permit me to explore what are the reasons that hold people back from joining Daf Yomi. You know, some people feel, I can't keep up. I've started many times, I fell behind and I fizzled out. Rabbi say it's a terrible mistake. If you can't do every daf, so what? Every line of Gemara, every word of Torah is precious. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Every word. It's worth millions, more than you can imagine. If you come when you come for 5 minutes a day to a Daf Yomi Shiur, and you chap around 10 lines of Gemara on every plot of Shas, that's no small feat. You'll have a relationship with the Torah. You'll be what I call a full-time, part-time participant. I want to read you a letter that I received on Erev Shabbos from a 75-year-old accountant. He wrote, as I sat this past Wednesday in MetLife Stadium, I was reflecting and thought to myself, I didn't finish Shas. Why am I rejoicing? What did I accomplish? I started Daf Yomi a number of times, but because of one reason or another, I couldn't keep up with the pace and I dropped out. But then I was enlightened that it's not an all or nothing project. Every block counts. He wrote, I still remember your words. You'll come up to Shamayim with 600 blot, 700 blot, 800 blot, 900 blot. It's not, is that so bad? Not at all. You inspired me to become, quote, a full-time, part-time participant. No, I did not complete Shas, but I tasted Shas. I haven't counted the number of blot that I covered, but I'm sure that it's close to the above numbers. On average, I was able to attend and learn 3 to 4 blot a week. I opened Masechtas that I had never laid my hands on. And this is what I accomplished, and I am so proud of it. Please share my story. Please inspire others to join as a full-time, part-time participant, and their life will be enriched. Rabbi Sai, the Gemara says, Omar Shmuel. Shmuel told his prized Talmud Rabbi Yehuda Shinina. He said, sharp one, remember this. Hi alma kibei hilula damya. This world is like a chasana, like a smorgasbord. Chatoif ve'echol. Chatoif ushasi. Grab and eat and grab and drink. Chatoif, chatoif, chatoif. Grab, chap arain what you can. If you come to the Daf Yomi twice a week, over 7.5 years, you'll learn close to 800 blot. There are others who say Daf Yomi goes too fast. Half of it I don't understand, and the other half I forget. Rabbi said there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Omar Rava. Rava said, La'olam ligris inish. A person should always learn. Afal gavdim mishakeach, even if you forget. Even if you don't fully understand what you're saying. Why? Because David HaMelech said, Garsa nafshi lisa'ava. My soul yearned to grind. El mishpatei tzidkecha your Torah. The Gemara points out, it says Garsa. Means grinding. And the Gemara says it should have said tochana, which is the typical terminology for grinding. Zakt Rashi. Garsa means when somebody tries to grind unsuccessfully. He doesn't do a good job at it. Zakt Rava, even if you're not succeeding at grinding the Gemara up, you forget it, you don't know what you're talking about. Learn it anyway. It will change you. It will nourish you. It will define you. We eat even though we expel the food. We sleep even though we get tired again. Klal Yisrael learns even though we forget and even if we don't fully understand, because the chiyus of Torah will go into our bloodstream and we'll have a relationship with the Torah. And lest anybody belittle a siyum, where people learn without remembering and where people forget and where people don't fully understand, let me share with you a Rashi in Shabbos. That Gemara, when Abaye said, Abaye made a siyum for a tzurba me'rabanan d'shalim mesechta. He completed a mesechta. Rashi feels compelled to interpret the word shalim. Zakt Rashi. Shalim, one word, Zakt Rashi. Garsa. That same word of the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Even if you learn the Gemara and you don't remember it, and you don't fully understand it, it's a yontif when you finish. Because you have a relationship with the Torah, it's daitan Allah. And when you have a relationship with the Torah, it's daitach halon. And so, Rabbi say, if you don't learn Daf Yomi, join us. And if you're already in the Daf Yomi, raise the level. You know, in New York, we have a 7-block chazara on Shabbos afternoon. When I first introduced it to the Balabatim, I told them Reb Moshe Feinstein used to learn 7-blot on Shabbos, and we all have to strive to be like Reb Moshe Feinstein. And they laughed, and they thought their rabbi had lost it. And then a few of them said, okay, we'll try. Today, it's 4 years later. We started Masechtas Nazir. Today, we have not missed a Shabbos of 7-block chazara. In an hour and a half, we learn it inside. And we have 8 balabatim who show up to the chazara. Rabbi say, you can do a chazara. 7-blot on Shabbos is not something that is beyond us. Raise the level. The Gemara in Eruvin says, Chayim heim lemoitza ehem. Another idea. People come to Daf Yomi and they just listen. Read the heilige words of the Torah. Say it with your mouth. It will give you chiyus. It will give you life. Chayim heim lemoitza ehem. Chayim heim lemoitzi ehem bepeh, the Gemara darshans. It gives chiyus to those who enunciate the words with their mouths. And then another suggestion. Write down a ha'ara a week. Take 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be an original chiddush. Write down a kasha, a teretz, a thought, a ha'ara, one ha'ara a week. After a year, you'll have over 50 ha'aras. After 7.5 years, you'll have a sefer on Shas. Be a Daf Yomi Yid. Have a relationship with the Torah. Make it your life. Make it your passion. Make it your mission. And you will find that the Torah will have a life-changing effect on you, on your wives, and on your children. And there's one more point. A mere 75 years ago, our nation experienced an unprecedented churban. Jews the world over embodied Lulei Sairascha Sha'ashuai Oz Avaditi Be'ani. In bunkers, in ghettos, in cattle cars, and in concentration camps, they desperately clung to the Eitz HaChaim with blood, sweat, and tears. And they personified the pasuk, Zeidim elitzuni ad mi'oid, umi tairascha loy natisi. Sinners ridiculed me, but I didn't budge from your Torah. They wanted to ensure the preservation of our cherished lifeblood. There's a story that was printed about a group of Bachrim in Auschwitz who were Talmidim of Rabbi Meir Shapiro from Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. And there in the Emek HaBacha, they formed an ad hoc yeshiva. Whenever the Nazis, Yamach Shemam V'Zircham, would look away, they would learn Gemara by heart. And there was a 17-year-old boy in their barracks from Czechoslovakia. He was irreligious, and his name was Bernie, and he knew nothing. And one day, to his shock, they invited him to join their yeshiva. And he told them, "You got the wrong man. I know nothing. I can barely read Chumash." But they prevailed upon him, and they started to teach him Torah. Chumash, Mishnayos, and ultimately Gemara. And they taught Bernie the third parak of Chulin, parak Elu Treifus. And weeks and months passed, and the Gehenna of Auschwitz took its toll. And one by one, the Talmidim of Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, these Bachrim withered, and they passed on. And the yeshiva's ranks were rapidly shrinking. And one day, Bernie approached his remaining friends and he asked, "I understand that you're constantly learning because it gives you strength, it gives you life. But why are you wasting your time on me?" And they responded, "We're not blind. We see what's happening. And we understand that it may only be a matter of time before it's our turn. And that's precisely why we're teaching you. Because maybe one of us will survive. And maybe that person will be you. And if you do, you will bear the responsibility to ensure that Torah continues. Whatever you learned here, pass it on. Cherish it. Teach it to the next generation and make sure Torah is never forgotten." There's a Gemara in Tainis Daf Chavtes. Misha Chorav Habayis. When the Beis HaMikdash was burning, the Skabsu Kitais Shel Pirchei Kahuna, Umafteiches HaHeichel B'Yadan. Groups of young Kohanim came together with the keys to the sanctuary. Va'olu Legaga Heichel, and they went up to the roof of the Heichel, the roof of that burning Heichel, Ve'amru, and they said, "Rabbeinu Shalaylam." They said, "God, Hayel V'loi Zachinu Liyos Gizbarim Nemanim." We did not merit to be trustworthy treasurers. You have obviously deemed us unworthy of being your treasurers. Yiyu Mafteches Mesuris Biyadcha. We're giving back the keys. V'zarkum Klape Maila, and they threw it up. V'yatzisa Ke'ein Pisas Yad, and a hand came down from Shemayim. V'kiblasan Mehen, and it took back the keys. V'kafzu v'nachflu l'saycha or, and they jumped and they fell into the fiery Heichal. V'aleyen koinen Yeshayahu Hanavi, Yeshaya was Masmidei, and he mourned and he lamented, Eich alu legagois, how these young Kohanim went up to the roofs. 75 years ago, our parents and grandparents survived the burning inferno, which consumed Heichalos of the great cities and the greatest yeshivas of Europe. Telzh, Varsha, Pressburg, Hungary, Kelm, Baranovitz, and Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. And the Talmidim of those yeshivas, our cherished She'eris HaPleita, could have stood on the roofs of those yeshivas, and they could have gone with the keys to the Torah, with the keys to the yeshivas, with the keys to Shas. And they could have told HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, take back the keys, Lo Zachinu Liyos Gizbarim Nemanim. But they refused to relinquish the keys to our precious treasure. They clung to the keys of the Torah. They took the keys of Shas, which Rabbi Meir Shapiro had handed them, and they handed it to us. And they said, Bi Gizbarim Nemanim. And they implored us, cherish the Torah, cherish Laimdei Torah, cherish B'nai Torah, cherish Talmidei Chachamim, cherish the Daf Yomi. Clutch those keys close to your heart and make it your passion. Make it your lifeblood. Make it your destiny. Live with the mantra of Lulei Seiroscha Shashuai Ozavaditi Biyani. Make it Daitan Allah. Rabbi Sai, let's take those keys. Let's take the keys that Reb Meir Shapiro handed us. Let's take the keys that Shlomo Lekulain refused to relinquish. Let's take the keys that those boys in Auschwitz refused to surrender. Let's take the keys that our parents and grandparents entrusted us with, and let's cherish those keys. Let's cherish the keys to Shas. Cherish the Daf Yomi. Cherish the Kvios Itim La Torah, whatever it may be. Make a commitment today to continue the legacy of Torah. Make it Daitan Allah. Embark on your own journey through Shas, together with hundreds of thousands of regular people from all walks of life. And together, we will be the bearers of the torch of Torah, and we will proudly carry the flag of Shas until we greet Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen.
Rabbonim, Choshev guest speaker, Masmidei, Daf Yomi, all those who came to Mekayim to cover the Torah. I'd like to express my Kosh HaTov to Agudath Yisrael, to Rav Berosham, all the Askonim who put in much time, hours, days, weeks, and months to put together this Gewaldige Maimad of cover the Torah. We had in my mind yesterday, we spalled for the Auskommen Tzechei Tzibur, and the Tefillah Brachis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shalom Scharam, Shvizecha, Brach Batzlacha B'chol Maaseh Yedayim. We came together today to Masiyum, Shas, Bavli, Daf Yomi. Just to mention, from the Kam Mailis Toivos of the learned Daf Yomi, mentioned many things I've mentioned already. One major mile is the Kriyas Shabai. Mentioned before, every word of the Torah is Choshev, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. But there's a new level of Talmud Torah of Kriyas. Lachem Efsim Shana will be all asked this question, Kovata the Torah. Do you learn Torah is one question. What is the Kriyas of learning Torah? It's Kovata Itim the Torah. It's a male level of Kriyas of certain what to learn, a continuity, regularity of learning Torah. A new level of Torah of Kriyas the Torah, a separate level of Gewaldige Madrega of its own. Finally, Mora tells us Vachem a mile of Todir, which is Todir, Gewaldige mile of mitzvahs. Todir Sheina Todir, just went through Chanukah, different halachas, Todir Sheina Todir, Todir is Koidem. When I ask a question, maybe Todir takes precedence over Mekudesh. Todir Mekudesh maybe more choshev. The Rabbi Mishnah is Todir Mechoshev Mekudesh. The fact that it's Todir, day in, day out, a separate level of Kedush Torah and Chashivas Torah. Rashi and Chumash seems to imply that a person has something on a regular basis, even once a day, but day in, day out, as if you're doing it constantly, not regularly, but constantly. Rashi says on the Ner of the Gemara, Hal the Shner Tomid. Tomid means constantly. So Rashi points out, even though it's only regularly, it's only once a night, every night, not all day. But every night as if it's Tomid. So to the carbon Tomid you brought in the morning is once a day in the morning, once at night in the afternoon. But it's Tomid. When it was done regularly, it's called Kandach Shivas of Todir. 1 mile of the Daf Yomi, every single day, day in, day out. A Kviyas the Torah, a separate level of Torah on its own. As far as a Siyum, so I'm making a Siyum, a separate Madrega of its own. Making a Dava Shalom, every Daf and every Amud is Choshev. But a Dava Shalom is also a world of its own. It's told over, then Shiur Baron came to the Chafetz Chaim. Chaim pointed out to him, he says, the person who knows the Masechta should make sure to finish the Masechta. The Shalmi says, Haiman the Goris Chad Masechta, Yoris Al Mechada. The person learns one Masechta, the whole Masechta, he's there to have Al Meshalim. Goris Masechta Chada, Yoris Al Mechada. Chafetz Chaim's Lashon was, a Masech Dafman Konchen. If you start Masechta, you have to finish the Masechta. Dava Shalom. Chofetz Chaim writes, in Shem Olam, Chofetz Chaim writes, just like the guf on this world needs three things to survive. It needs food, needs clothing, needs a place to live, a roof over your head. Chofetz Chaim said in the Shomer Al Memes also has to have mozain, has to have ksus, to have a mother, a place to live. Shomer Zeicher, Mirz Hashem, come to Elam Memes, but where do you go? You have to have a place to go. Chofetz Chaim points it out so eloquently. He says, in this world, a person can't afford it. Can rent an apartment, can rent a house. Someone give him a house, shayla, schiras. Chofetz Chaim, the Elam Memes, such a thing, no shayla, no schiras. A person has a place to go. And he comes to Elam Memes, he gets Elam Memes, but where do you go? There's food. Mitzvah, you said, no, provide food. You said, mitzvahs provide malbush. But what provides a mother? Where's the person supposed to go? Chofetz Chaim says, Mishneh Chachmois Bonza Beisa. According to the Torah, according to the Bais, B'Olam Haba. Person learns Torah, he's there to have a place to go to Olam Haba. Mirz Hashem, when we get there, we have to have a place to go. Roof over our head. The Shom needs a place to go. The only way to get a place to go is the Torah. Chofetz Chaim points out in Chaim Asadas, they look up and down the streets as they're building houses. The premature stages, they have the shell up, but no windows, no doors. Not really a place to go. Chofetz Chaim said a person learns Torah, but he's missing a parak here, a parak there. House isn't finished. House not finished. Olam Memes, no roof on the house, no windows, no doors, unfinished. Person Zeicher, during the whole Masechta, guards Masechta Choda, Zalma Choda, the house that a person expects to go to Olam Memes is a full house. That's one Masechta. How much more so a person finished Baruch Hashem goes through Shas, many Masechtas. The Gemara said at the end of Edges said the person Zeicher has Shai Olamis, many Olamis. Each Olam has to have a place to go. Where do you go? Person Zeicher to be Messiah Shas, Zeicher to have many Batim Shleimim, place for Neshama to go, Los Lavoi. That's the Gvalti Simcha of the Messiah. Mentioned before, it's really a double Simcha. And Simcha's Torah, when Klal Yisrael finishes the Chumash, he says a piyut, Sisu v'simcha b'simchas ha-Torah. There's Sisu and the Simcha b'simchas ha-Torah. What is Sisu, what is Simcha? So the Goyen says, Sasain is an expression of a person as a Simcha, what he already accomplished. Simcha, a person is happy what's going to be, looks to the future and is excited about the future. We said yesterday in Davening, Smeichem b'tzeisam, v'sofsim b'voyam. When the Shemesh embarks on its course of the day, goes out with the expectations and the plan to shine on the world, is Smeichem b'tzeisam, getting ready for a day's accomplishments, all excited about it. But Smeichem b'tzeisam. But at the end of the day, when he finishes, he comes to Shleimus, is Sofsim b'voyam. Today is a double Simcha. Simcha say also, Sisu v'simcha. Those who finished, they're Sofsim. Those who are starting, is Smeichem. Interesting enough, you find the greatest Simcha is when we start. It's not called Sosin Torah, after Shmini Atzeres, it's called Simchas Torah. The Simcha beginning, like the Goyen says, beginning, that's Simcha. So we come together in Simchas Torah, we finish the Chumash, start again. The Gvaldige Simcha of beginning. Mentioned many times over the evening, over the afternoon, people wonder, I didn't finish, so what Daf Yomi to do with me? It's a famous quip from one of the G'dalei Rebbes before the war, who was dancing with Torah, Gvaldige Simcha with Olam and Shul. He noticed on the side, one Yid is sitting on the side, not partaking in that kofis. So Rebbe goes over to him and he says, Rabbi Moshe, Simchas Torah, join us that kofis. So he says, Bashfully, he says, Rebbe, don't have much of him Sameach. Kriyas Torah was listening so much to Kriyas Torah during the year. Mav Sedra, can't say it was Mav Sedra week. Chofetz Chaim said, you must have with Rashi, it's a Gvaldik school of Yerushalayim. I don't feel I'm part of it. The Rebbe said, we have two chasanim Simchas Torah. We have a chassan Torah. We have a chassan Breishis also. Those are finished, it's a chassan Torah. Those are beginning, have a chassan Breishis. If you have a Reb Simcha, a Reb Sasain, those are finished, Baruch Hashem, the Bali Sasain. If you have Bali Simcha also. I mentioned over, Bali Simcha, those who are Zeichet, Messiah Shas, went through Shas, Bali Sasain. They have Bali Simcha also. Season of Simcha, b'Simchas HaTorah. Hashgacha arranged it today is not the day of Sasain. Today, day of Simcha. Yesterday we finished. Today we begin. Today, day of beginning, like all the mentioned earlier, it's a day for everyone to join and begin with the Gvaldik Simcha, the future, hopefully, to be able to come Bali Sasain, we're starting with Bali Simcha. It's no coincidence that today, starting Daf Yomi, Brachas Dabeis, is the day that Yevonim want to rip out the Torah, destroy the Torah. Ches Teves. The Gemara said, Medrash says, as Ches Teves, the darkest days of the year. Yod HaChoshech L'Olam. Talmud HaMelech called the Skenim, Tag Mashivim, called them together and forced them to interpret the Torah Yevonis. They wanted to take control of the Torah and slowly to destroy the Torah. Therefore, we say on the Slichas, Teves, Shloshtam Kavati Tainis. Tainis of Teves is also including the Gvaldik Gzeira, the Choshech of Chachmas Yevonis, and the Targum Mashivim. That day, Ches Teves becomes the Gvaldik day of Simcha, the Matman HaOrg, the Matman HaChoshech, Mit Hashem, starting today, Brachas Dabeis, Gvaldik Simcha, Yom HaSimcha, Simchas Torah, Simcha for the future, like the Goin says. If you could like to make a suggestion, the Goin says a remarkable thing. The Goin says we have Torah B'Ksav and Torah Baal Peh. Torah Baal Peh, the Goin says, is Baal Peh. We have, because Baruch has two Shemus. Because Baruch is known with two Shemus. In Pash Shmois, because Baruch told Moshe Rabbeinu, Zeh Shmi Le'olam, Ve'zichi Le'dor Dor. Baruch has a name, but you don't use that name. The Shem HaNichtov, Shem Havaya. The Shem HaNikra, Ve'zichel Dev Aleph Daled. The one that the Baal Peh, the Goyen says, Keneged Torah Baal Peh. Torah Baal Peh is 65 Mesechtes, Kimi the Shem Adnas. The Goyen explains they have 60 Mesechtes that discuss the halachas of the Raisis, and 5 Mesechtes that discuss Mitzvah Rabbanon, the Ma'ai Erevin. That's the breakdown of the Shem Adnas. The Nun, the Yud, is 60, Keneged the Mesechtes that discuss the Mitzvah Daraisa, and the Aleph and Daled, the 5 Mesechtes that discuss Mitzvah Rabbanon, Keneged the Shem Adnas, which I would imagine, to get the message is, Adnas Hashem Adin. Klai Yisrael goes to times of Tzoros, Midas Adin is Shoilet. So how do we protect ourselves in time of Tzoros? Torah Baal Peh, that's that protection for Klai Yisrael. More than Sytner, is Torah, is Maggidei, or Matzil, bin Osik Bey, bin Losik Bey, like a skula of Torah. That's the Shem Adnas, Midas Adin, Din, Adnas. And the antidote against that is, like the Goyen says, 65 Mesechtes of Shas, or Torah Baal Peh. If the Keneged the Shem Baal Peh, Keneged the Shem Baal Peh. But the Goyen says, likewise, the Shem Havaya, the Shem HaNichtov, Keneged the Shem B'Ksav. Torah B'Ksav is 26 Chalokim, 24 Kisvei HaKodesh, and the Shnei Luchos. The Goyen says, those to connect the Shem Havaya. If you make a suggestion, spoke about Daf Yomi, undertaking, starting the cycle again, those who finished, to restart, Hadra Chalon, Hadra Naloch. So if they didn't start, we didn't learn yet, starting again. Maybe it's Kaddish to include the Tanakh Yomi. Lately, it's been arranged a couple of years ago, a project, a schedule for learning Tanakh Yomi. Rashi, the beginning of Breishis says, Midas Hadin the Gefel Chazach. Shbaruch's first machshav was, create the world, Shbin Leig Midas Hadin. Shbaruch said, it's not going to work. Oilam Eskayim, it's shot for Midas Rachmim. So maybe Torah Baal Peh, it's Keg Midas Hadin, it's Megan Kenei Hadin, but Torah B'Ksav is a Shutif Midas Rachmim. Maybe it's Kedai to include in one schedule if you have time to join. Schedule of Tanakh Yomi. Goes to the Tanakh schedule. Choshve Yingaman, Pshai Hershkowitz, Malabni Seder Torah. Arrange the schedule for learning Tanakh Yomi. Schedule Sytner Psukim every day. It's supposed to have time to Kedai, to have the shit of Midas Hadin, Midas Arachmim, to Mam Tidinim. Hopefully in the schus of Torah, Shbaruch should protect us in times of Din, Bidin Rischa, to protect us. Hopefully the Torah should come to ultimate time of Mashiach Tzidkeinu, B'mheir V'yameinu, Amen. I was asked to make the Siyum, but the Shakal already made the Siyum. Shakal said the last Gemara, neither Ton Bel Yo, Kol Hashem, Machal Haus, Machal Yom. The Gemara Taka finishes off with the halach of Kviyas, Kol Yom, a level of Torah with Kviyas. Because I said, Kol ever learns all Machal Yom, Muftach Lai, Gantu, Shamam, Shanema, Alicha Sayam Lai. Alicha, Tigalichs, Alichas, Halachas, person Zeicha, Tav Halachas, Halichas, Zeicha, Tav Oilam Lai. Like the Chafetz Chaim said, the person learns Torah, Zeicha, Tav, a bias, but Mabah, Halichas, Oilam Lai, and the real Oilam Mabah. Hadden Loch, die Neus, look at Masechta, is neither. Hadden Loch. Hadden Loch, Talmud Babli, Hadroch Alon. Deitloch, Talmud Babli, Deitloch, Stashi, Minoch, Talmud Babli, Stashi, Damasi. Hadden Loch, Talmud Babli, Hadroch Alon. Hadden Loch, Talmud Babli, Deitloch, Stashi, Minoch, Talmud Babli, Stashi, Damasi. Hadden Loch, Talmud Babli, Hadroch Alon. Hadden Loch, Talmud Babli, Talmud Stashi, Minoch, Talmud Babli, Stashi, Damasi. Vandaag on de heil of zijn terrorisme, maar we zijn maar ba. Naba papa, Roma papa, Nachma papa, Achaba papa, Born papa, Ramba papa, Rocket papa, Sura papa, Alpha. Have no relative so we feel in the colon Achma said same time the colon Shmam to Zakh Shma. Make it family. So we want to myself you don't understand then come. Vandaag on de heil of zijn terrorisme, give us a medicine, give us much him almost give me the term. In the up there on main helmet, Kab Sam, Kab Sacha, what's my boy, I don't touch. There got nearly Hainu. So 13th Siyum Talmud Bavli. Hasil says from Machem Simon. Blum, let's try to call the Talmud Biabu. After I'm on time, so Pino, sometimes Skybon. Salacha Tanchoisa. Tishma Kiasi, give you a commission. I'm here, what's my Adinoi Oislam Moita, and the Yavach Sami Vashalom.
Please rise for Kaddish. Rev Benzin Heitner will recite the Kaddish. L'zecher Nishmis, his parents, his in-laws, and all the Kaddoshim.
Iskadal v'iskadash shmei rabo v'yomodi hu osid las chadoso l'achyo meisaya l'soka yasoin l'chai olmo l'mivnei karto d'yishleim l'shachlo l'heich l'begavo l'mekal pulchono nicho min aral v'asoa b'lchono d'yishmai l'asre v'yamlich kutsha b'richu malchusei v'korei yatzmach b'konei v'koev mishichei B'chayei choin, uv'yoimei choin, uv'chayei d'chol beis Yisroel. Ba'agolo v'zman korev v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabo mevorach l'olam li'olmei olmayo. Yizborach v'yishtabach v'yisbar v'yisamam v'yisnasei. V'yis hado, v'yis ale, v'yis halol, shemei de kudsha berichu. Le'elo min kol birchoso, v'shiroso, tushbachoso, v'nechemoso, ta'amiron b'yolmo, v'imru amen. Al Yisrael, v'al Rabbonon, v'al Tamidayon, v'al kol Tamidei Samideihoin, v'al kol man de oskin ba'oirai, so di ba'ascho adain, v'di v'chol asar v'asar. Yehei lehoin ulechoin shlomo rabbo, Chino v'chizno v'rachmin v'chaya yarich in mezaynei revicha ifekono min kon in kodam avundi v'ishmayo v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemayo v'chayim toivim oleinu b'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oisei shalom b'imroimav hu b'rachmo v'yasa shalom oleinu b'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Yeah. Yashrei mi shekotoy batoyro hey amoloy batoyro ashrei mi shekotoy batoyro hey amoloy batoyro yo yesen nachazri yo yesen nachazri oy le yo izro
Mazel Tov to all of the Masayim. Today we are participating in the largest gathering L'Chavod Torah in Toronto's history. Poischim b'chvoid hachsanya. We'd like to thank the Agudath Yisrael of Toronto and the entire Siyum Hashas committee, Uwe Roisham, Reb Shaul Anisfeld, Reb Mordechai Mandelbaum, and Reb Menachem Brown. A Yashir Koyach. A Yashir Koyach to Rav Shlomo Miller, Rav Moshe Martcheloi, and Rav Mendel Brodsky for their guidance and warm encouragement in planning every aspect of the Siyum. We'd like to extend a warm thank you to the Metro Toronto Convention Center and Mr. David Evans, the Toronto Police Service, and Sergeant Dominic Bertuzzi, who's here today with us, David Stein and Gesher Canada for security agency coordination, and Hatzalah Toronto. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Toronto City Councillor Mr. James Pasternak and Mr. Steve Schulman of the UJA. Thank you to our event management company, Redstone Agency, and their dedicated staff. And a special thank you to Agudath Yisrael of America, who put together the World Global Siyum, and to Rabbi Simcha Bamberger, Director of Torah Projects and the Toronto Siyum Liaison. Yashir Koyach to Rabbi Yossi Braun for leading the entire committee and your tireless efforts for today's success. Thank you to the dozens of volunteers that have come down today to help run and make today's Siyum a success. We would like to thank all of our generous sponsors whose vision and support for this Kiddush Hashem made it a reality and the success that it is. And most important, a Yashir Koyach to all of the Loimdim and their families who have stood beside them and encouraged them every day for the last 2,711 days. Mazel Tov. It is my covet to ask Harav Yaakov Hassan, Rosh Kollel of the Toronto Sephardic community, to please come and be Maschel Masechtas Brachos and Talmud Bavli As we all join in the beginning of the 14th cycle of Daf Yomi, may we be zoichet to celebrate the 14th Daf Yomi Siyum Hashas in Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh. Rabbi Hassan.
Bershut, Mori Rabbi Harosh Kolel Shalita, Bershut, Morenu Haroshi Yeshiva, Rabbanim Chashuvim, Marbitzei Torah, Chol HaKehilot HaKedoshot, Kol Echad, Lefi Kevodo Uma'alato. Be'emet, we're standing here, tremendous ma'amad of Kiddush Shem Shamayim, Baruch She'echiyana v'kiyimana v'giyana lazman hazeh, everyone together, coming together to celebrate a true Kiddush Shem Shamayim of Kavod HaTorah in its fullest. And therefore it is an et ratzon for us, not only in tefillah, but also to make commitments. It will be zocheh to special siyata dishmaya, that our commitments will bear fruit. And as we're coming now to start the first Mishnah Berachot, just a word of chizuk. The Chafetz Chaim, he gathered together in the famous Va'ada Yeshivot, when he spoke in front of many Rabbanim, he noted Sarosh al Esav started only fighting with Yaakov Avinu, the Satan, not with Abraham and not with Yitzchak. And he said over, the Satan can handle chesed in its fullest, tefillah, avodah, but when it came to Torah, he felt the full threat, and he came out in war against Yaakov. And that's how it is b'chol dor vador. The biggest Yetzer Hara is to try to stop us, our connection and learning. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, Hashem Yinkom Damo, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, said, the explanation is, Chachamim teach us, Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tavlin. That means Chazal are telling us there is only one antidote for the Yetzer Hara, one recipe. And if we think there's another one, we're mistaken. That is Torah Tavlin. It's only through our connection to Torah. And therefore he explained, Kol Zman, two sides, there's a milchama between us and the Yetzer Hara. Kol Zman, two sides are fighting. Even when one's going down and one's going up, the war is not over. There's always ups and downs. But as soon as one side removes the other side weapons, the war is over. Torah is that. That's our weapon. And Kol Zman, we're connected to Torah, day in, day out, b'hatmada atzuma, everyone according to his ability to strengthen in that nekudav, day in, day out, tedirut. Then we're connected to Torah, and that is our chance against Yetzer Hara. Bifrat nowadays, the nisyonot, the challenges are very great. The only way is rak, to be connected to Torah. Torah, Torah only. That's what Chazal are teaching us, and that's the only way. Having said that, the words of the Orchot Chaim Laharosh, the famous words, bring the Gemara, he says, quotes the Gemara, on learning Gemara, En lecha midah tova hemena utnan Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The Mefarshim explain. The Rosh is implying over here, the main part of Torah Shabbat, the main part of Limud Torah is Limud HaGemara. And Utnan Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam is specifically on that. Like the Turei Zahav explains in Orach Chaim Echot V'Kata Torah. The main reward of Limud HaTorah is the toil and the yigiyah that we put in, which is through Torah Shabbat, through Limud HaGemara. Toil doesn't have to mean how many hours per se, it's how much yigiyah we put in, whether it's after a hard day's work and still we come, and that's toil also. Whether it's learning many hours straight, focusing for long, there's all kinds of toil, but it's through toil and yigiyah. And on that, the Rosh is saying, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The Gemara in Berachot says, Arba'at devarim tzrichim chizuk, and one of them is Torah. Rashi explains, what's chizuk? Tamid ubechol kocho. Always with all your strength, with all your energy. Torah needs chizuk, Rabotai. As we start, let us think about this. And as we're making our nuhat chala, let's make commitments. Ve'ikar, to continue and to strengthen whatever we have already. To strengthen daily commitments. No, not letting a day pass by, everyone according to his abilities. But we must connect ourselves more to the Torah. That is our itzah. Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tavlin. With this, let us begin the first Mishnah in Berachot. Me'ematai korin et shema ba'arvit. The Mishnah starts. From when is it that we can start reading Kriyat Shema Arvit? We know we have a mitzvah in the Torah to read Kriyat Shema, V'shochbecha u'v'kumecha. Tosafot explains this Mishnah is going back on the pasuk V'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, and the Mishnah is asking from when do we start reading Kriyat Shema Ba'arvit? Misha'ah she'kohanim nichnasim le'echol b'trumatan. From when Kohanim, who were tameh, and then were tovel, and they still have to wait ha'arev shemesh till tzeta kochavim. That's when the zman of Kriyat Shema is. And the Mishnah is teaching us, derech agav, that the time that they're tahor completely is tzeta kochavim. That's the beginning zman. Ad sof, until when? Ha'ashmura harishona, divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, the zman is until the first mishmar of the night. The Rav and the Rambam explain, Al pi the Gemara, there's 3 mishmarot, divided according to the work of the Malachim and Shamayim. And after the first third of the night, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the Kriyat Shema expires, because he holds Shechiva doesn't have to do with time when people are sleeping, but actually going to sleep. Chachamim omrim ad chatzot. Chachamim are cholek and say no. Until chatzot, you could say Kriyat Shema. As we'll see later in the Mishnah, Chachamim do not argue in Rabban Gamliel, but lechatechila you have to read until chatzot. Rabban Gamliel omer ad she'aleh amud hashachar. Gamliel says that the Zman Kriyat Shema is until dawn. Amud HaShachar, the Gemara explains in a few places, is way before Netzach Hama. It's the first ray of light coming as the sun is climbing above the horizon. The Gemara says in Masachet Pesachim, in Nisan Tishrei, in Eretz Yisrael, it's Arba' Milin Kodem Netzach Hama, which according to the Shulchan Aruch, at that point, is 72 minutes. But of course, that fluctuates according to where you live and according to what time of the year. Ma'aseh Sheba'u Banav mi Bet HaMishteh. There was a story where the children of Rabbi Gamliel came back from Bet HaMishteh. Amru lo, they said to him, Lo karinu et Shema, we did not yet read Kriyat Shema Shel Arvit. Amar lahem, he said to them, Im lo ala amud hashachar chayavin atem likrot. If it did not yet reach dawn, which is the first ray of light in the sky, then you're still chayav because it's still night. In Dinei HaTorah, it's still considered laila. And Rabbi Gamliel holds that Zman Kriyat Shema Balayla is for the entire night. And the Mefarshim explain as the Mishnah continues, and the Gemara, that Chachamim also agreed, really, and they just, Laharchik Adam Ha'avera, they said Ad Chatzot. But the Mishnah says, V'lo zu bilvad, not only here did Chachamim say that, El kol ma she'amru Chachamim Ad Chatzot, mitzvatan ad she'aleh amud hashachar. Whenever the Chachamim said the Zman of a mitzvah Balayla is only until midnight, really, they agree the mitzvah is until Amud HaShachar. Hekter chalavim ve'evarim, the burning of fats and limbs, which we know, the korbanot that were brought by day, the leftovers of the chalakim of the korban had to be burnt. Kol al mugdal mizbeach kol halayla. Mitzvatan, also the mitzvah is ad she'aleh Amud HaShachar, until dawn, the first ray of light. V'chol ha'ne'echalim liyom echad, and all korbanot which the mitzvah is for the zman achila, is one day and one night. Mitzvatan ad she'aleh amud hashachar. Also, the expiration is by dawn, which is the first ray of light. Because again, the yisod is that in Dinei HaTorah, Laila is until amud hashachar, and then starts Yom. Im ken lama amru chachamim ad chatzot. So why is it that the chachamim teach us that we should be machmir and only do it until chatzot? Kedei laharchik ha'adam min ha'avera. In order that a person should be stayed away from an avera, as a geder, they made a siyag, that chas v'shalom, we should not, by delaying, we may delay the mitzvah completely, and therefore they instructed that we're mechuyav to say Kriyat Shema and all other these mitzvot until chatzot. But they really agree, if a person didn't, that the mitzvah is kol halayla, like Rabban Gamliel. Yehi ratzon v'lifnei avinu shebashamayim. We should be zocher laharbot kavod shamayim, to be marbe kvod shamayim, through our consistent commitment and strengthening our commitment. And through that, Rabotai, we should all be zocheh laharamat kern haTorah ad bi'at goel tzedek bimhera v'yamenu amen.
Birshus kol hakol hakadosh hazeh. What exactly does it mean that we dedicate the Siyum Hashas to those 6 million Kedoshim shemosru nafsham al kiddush Hashem? Beinehem 1 million Tenoika Shel Beis Rabban, those pure, energetic neshamas, that their souls were stuffed out of them in Auschwitz, in Treblinka, in Mauthausen, in Bergen-Belsen, in those accursed places, Hashem Yinkoim Damon. I want to share with the Choshev Tzibur the last Kol Nidre Derosha that our great Rebbe Rameh Shapiro said. He walked from where he lived in Yeshivas Chachma Lublin to daven Kol Nidre in the Mashal Shul, which is 15 minutes away from the yeshiva, flanked with a few of his Talmidim. And the following episode unfolded in front of his eyes. As is the custom, we take out the Sefer Torah before we say Oyer Zerua Ala Tzadik, when we usher in the awesome day of Yom Kippurim. There was an old man, an elder Yid, that had the chazaka to take out the Sefer Torah. The Yid went up the stairs, took out the Sefer Torah, and he was hugging the Sefer Torah with every fiber of his being. And as he was going down those stairs, he began to lose his balance and he began to trip. Instead of grabbing hold of the railing, this old Yid calculated that if I do that, perhaps I'm jeopardizing the safety of the Sefer Torah. So he embraced the Sefer Torah with all his might and he fell backwards onto the hard floor of the steps of the Aron HaKodesh in the Mashal Shul in Lublin. After Kol Nidre, Rameh Shapiro, cloaked in his kittel and talis, started off his derasha and he lifted up his eyes to Shemayim. And he said, Habeit mishamayim erei riboini shloilam. Look at your dear and precious children. This personifies our very essence. This Yid sacrificed his comfort for the sake of the safety of the Torah. He wasn't ready to Chas Shalom call a zilzul in the Sefer Torah on the expense of his comfort. That's exactly what we are about. We go through Golus, we find ourselves in difficult situations, but we never abandon the Heilige Torah HaKadoshah. But Moirai v'Rabboisai, it would be a tragic mistake for anybody sitting here to think that the eternal message of Rameh Shapiro was that we're supposed to sacrifice our comfort for the sake of Torah. In Shnas Tov Shian Chav Ches, the Heilige Ger Rebbe, the Pnei Menachem, said the following insight as he spoke about the dedication of Yidden to learn Torah HaKadoshah in the ghettos, in the concentration camps, after being starved, after being tortured and beaten. The Pasuk says in Eicha, B'machashakim eshivani k'meisei oilam, Hashem, you made me sit in darkness, say Chazal, B'machashakim eshivani, da Talmud Bavli. Hat gefragt der Heilige Ger Rebbe, Talmud Bavli you refer to as darkness. There's nothing that sheds more light than a Daf Gemara. He said in the name of the Kotzker Rebbe, the pshat is different. B'mechshakim, I find myself engulfed in darkness. Heshivani av yishuv adas. I am calm. I am relaxed. How is it ever possible for a person to be in the darkness of the dark and be heshivani? The answer to that is Zu Talmud Bavli. When we are connected to the Torah HaKadoshah, then we can endure darkness and find solace. Be comforted by the Talmud Bavli. How does this work? What's the ingredient? And their answer is, we are composed of two parts. We have an external part to us called the body, but we have an inner part which is our essence, which is a neshama, which is a ruach. When a person focuses primarily on his external, on his body, then true, he's finding himself in darkness, he's in a death camp, he's being tortured, he's being burnt, he's being beaten. But all those beaten that took place, from Yud Zayin Elul till Tov Reish Tadik Tes till Tov Shin Hey, didn't touch our souls, didn't touch the neshama, didn't touch our ruach. When we are people of neshama, then we can survive and endure B'mechshakim hashivayni. How does a person become a person, an individual of Ruach? The answer is Zu Talmud Bavli. When a person learns the Daf Gemara, you know what he's accomplishing? He's injecting into his bloodstream that he is now becoming an Ish Asher Ruach Elokim boy. When we are people of the spirit, not people of the body, then we can survive torture and deprivation, starvation, because our souls are still on fire with Avas Hashem and Avas HaTorah. Moirai v'Rabboisai. We're not celebrating tonight only that people have learned 2,700 Dafim Gemara. We have to understand and recognize the commitment to Daf Yomi is a commitment to strengthen my Ruach, my Neshama. When a person says, no matter what, I'm going to be Kaveh Itim LeTorah, despite that I haven't had supper or it's early in the morning, I would like to sleep. I'd like to go on vacation, I'd like to get together with friends, and I say no for the sake of Talmud Bavli. This is a demonstration, and this is an act of instilling Ruach into his bloodstream. We are celebrating tonight 2,711 injections of Ruach, of Neshama. Listen to the profound words of the Slonim Rebbe Nesiva Shalom, Zecher Tzadik v'Kaddish Levracha. In the year Tavshin Gimel, he miraculously survived the Holocaust. He lost his entire family, his father, his mother, and many siblings, and he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he opened up the gates of Yeshiva's Beis Avraham in the middle of the Holocaust. And at the Anachas Even HaPinah, he said the following: we know that we've lost thousands and thousands and millions of Kedoshim in those gas chambers a couple of 100 miles away. Ich habe nicht a Weg. I don't have a way, unfortunately and tragically, to bring back those bodies. But I do have a way to bring back their spirit. When I'm opening a yeshiva Agudath, where there's going to be bochrim that immerse themselves in Aloi Shel Torah, and they're going to be people of the Spirit, then they going to come in contact and revive those Kedoshim Utahurim Shemasru Nafsham Al Kiddush Hashem. The Daf Yomi has been dedicated. The Daf Yomi, that's a movement of Ruach, has been dedicated to bring back, to revive those Neshamois, Kedoshos Utahuros. Shemasru nafsham, v'loi rucham v'nishmosam. The Ruach continues to live with us till this very day. The Ruchi asher elecha, udvora asher samti beficha. As we were promised, lo yamishu mipicha, v'uzera zarecha am Hashem, ma'ato v'yadoilam.
Please rise for the reciting of the Keil Molei Rachamim, followed by Kaddish, L'zecher Nishmas, the 6 million Kedoshim. Our very own Reb Shloime Simcha Safrin will recite the Keil Molei Rachamim, and the Kaddish will be recited by Reb Avram Blimen, soll sein gesund und stark bis 120.
B'malos kedoshim otoyerim kezoyar שנשחטו ושנשרפו ושנטבעו ושנחנקו על קידוש השם Yedei atzoyr limagam ani v'yozedeyem yimach shemo v'zichno bavu shonu loy metim v'noisim tzedoko v'yadas koras nishemo yesey
Shmai Rabu. B'yom budvu cheresai, b'yamlich malchesai, b'yatzmach berkunai, b'kurai f'mishichai. B'chayai choin, b'yoy mai choin, b'chayai dechol bais Yisroel, Magulu v'zman kurev v'yimri yomayin. Yahai shmai rabu mvurayich le'ulam le'olmai olmayu. Spurach v'yishtabach v'yispurach v'yischoy mayim v'yisnasai. V'yisado v'yisalev v'yisalol. Shemai dikitshu b'riyachi. Liailu, Nkol B'chusu v'shirusu, Tishb'chusu v'nachamusu, Damiron b'yolmu v'yimri yomai, Yehai Shalom Rabbi min Shemayu, V'chaim toivim m'layni, V'kol Yisruel v'yimri yomai, V'sei Shulam b'mroimov, Yas Shuloim Ulayni, ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו יומיים.
Doilai Torah, Shebiraini Bershis Kolakula Kaddish Hazeh. We hear thousands of Yidden who are mishtatev in the Siyum Hashas. This Eures is Ad Beli Dai. I want to share you a very moving Siyum Hashas that happened in this city just a few days ago. There was a young man who started 7.5 years ago, diligently every day, mitoch Yesirim, learning the Daf. Nothing stopped him. Chitzi went to Koilul. He was learning every day the Daf. Shuvik Chai, L'chol Chai. The Rebbeinu Shalom took his neshama away just a very short time ago, 2 months ago. His Rebbetzin and his children decided that the Koil HaTorah is still in the house. And Tati is making a Siyum. And we have to participate in the Simcha. And she gathered the children together, brought her parents, and she made a Siyum Hashas, believing and knowing that Tati is continuing the Koil HaTorah, b'mesifte the Rukia. This is a testimony that the Koil HaTorah is nitzchias. It continues and will always continue. We just said an imam in B'minah Shalaymu, and I want to conclude with this. Every yid in this room now, with the hisoyres that we heard, the drushes, the hischaskes, the simchas HaTorah, is going out from here with a cheshbon of how he can elevate his limit HaTorah, his shibit to the Torah. Every woman is ready to give up so much that she's to see that her husband is continuing and striving in a higher level than today. How does one be able to keep on this? We know we go out of this room and we're in a different world. And the answer is what we just now sang, an imam b'minah shalaymu. The Heilige Kaddish Levi says that in order for a person to elevate in Torah, he has to elevate in the Heilige Boire. It is wach araisu v'kitshu berichi v'yisruel chad. When Yidden gather together mit Asa Achdus, mit Achdus HaBoire, and mit Achdus HaTorah, with a minne shalayme de Boira Yizburach Shaboyi, Boira Yimanik L'chol HaBriyim. And we take him into ourselves and we infuse it into our home and we talk about it continuously. We will zoichen to Hasugas, HaTorah on a higher level. And that's why when Mashiach is going to come and we're going to see even more Nisim, we'll see a Torah Chadushim, iti taitzai, and a higher level of Torah. But now, we're here in this moment, every Yid to take upon himself, obviously it's no Chiddush, that nobody is going out from here, with a Chizik and Torah and a Minne, and that's why we're going to conclude with the Piska HaYichit, that every Yid says, B'ne'ile, every Yid says, the last moments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him in this world. He's Mekabel Oil Malchus Shemayim, and he tries to take away all pniyas. He has nothing else that he cares. He doesn't care for anything. But Kabulas al Torah and al Mitzvahs and al Malchus Shemayim B'Shleimus for him, and for his children, and for his grandchildren, at Soif Kol Hadoiris. Uni mikablem oil malchus shemayim biyahav. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloi Hayni Adonai Eichad. Shaim kevoit malchisoy leolam vuet. Burich shaim kevoit malchisoy leolam vuet. Burich Shaim Kevoit Malchisoi Le'olam Vuet. Adonai, Hiu Elohim. 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 Adonai Melech, Adonai Mulach, Adonai Imloich Le'olam Vuet.
We will now daven Mariv all together in one minyan, Beroiv Am. Mariv will be led by Rab Shlomo Zolti. Anyone who is saying Kaddish is asked to come up to the front so that the Kaddish can be said together, Beroiv Am.
Hushua Sadikim Adonai Muzam Be'ez Tzara, V'yazarem Adonai Yifalatem, Yifalatem Rishoim, V'yishiyam, Kichasu Boi, Yizkaral V'yizkarash Mei Rabbo, Bomo Divrach Yerusei, V'yamlich Malchusei, V'yatzmach Perkanei, V'yikarif Mishichei, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelch Yanenu, B'yoim Kareinu, Baruch Hu Es Adonai Hamavayrach. Baruch Adonai Hamavayrach, L'olam Voed. Baruch Adonai Makolam, Asher B'forim Baruch Asher B'tenu B'tenu